Alright, good morning class. So I know on the quiz that I'll be going through a couple problems that were on the quiz. These were requested that I go through. I know we haven't done a lot of problems like this in the past. We have touched a few of them once or twice, but I thought it'd be a good idea that maybe on your own you can take notes on this video. You could pause it when you need to understand something. I just thought it'd be a good idea to go through a couple of these problems. So going through this first one, it was number 10 on your quiz. It says, given that the quadrilateral is a parallelogram, find the values of x and y. So what we have here is a parallelogram, and notice that our arrows are pointing to the diagonals within the actual parallelogram. So what we know about diagonals within a parallelogram is that diagonals bisect each other. So this means that they're being cut in half and that they're equal. Alright, so knowing this bit of information, we can kind of use that to our advantage. But if we notice, I think what threw most of you off was that there's two variables. We have an x and y in kind of both of these diagonals and such, and so we couldn't really easily solve for one or the other. So we went through one of these before. So what we had to do was we had to solve for one variable so that we could, we could solve for y in terms of x so that we could solve for x. So the easiest way here was to notice that to set one of them equal to each other. So we could set 3x minus 4 is equal to 18. We could also set 5x plus y is equal to 7. And I would say that this is the easiest bet because when we solve for y, or if we choose to solve for y, we don't actually have to divide by anything. So notice here if we solve by x or y here, we would have to divide by 3 or negative 4. If we solve for x here, we'd have to divide by 5. And so we'd have some nasty fractions. So I would suggest using these two values. Alright, so we know that these are going to be the same. So what we have is 5x plus y is equal to 7. Right? And once again, just like I suggest solving for y in terms of x. So it's really a one-step equation. So to get the y alone, we're going to subtract 5x from both sides. And when we do this, notice we can't combine these. They're not like terms. This one does not have an x. So we have y is equal to 7 minus 5x. So key idea here. I saw many of you had this on your paper and then didn't know what to do with it. So what we do next is we're going to take this other side. So we have 3x minus 4y is equal to 18. Once again, we still have two variables, and that's not ideal, but notice we did solve for y in terms of x. So we can put this value in for y here, and then we'd only have x terms to be dealing with. So we have 3x minus 4 times y, which we now solve for, is 7 minus 5x is equal to 18. Alright, so when we do this, I highly suggest you distribute. That's the next step. So we have 3x minus 4 times a positive 7, that is a negative 28. And then we have a negative 4 times a negative 5x, that's a positive 20x. And this is still equal to 18. Alright, now it's just a matter of combining like terms and solving for x. So we have 3x and 20x. Those are like terms, so 20 plus 3 gives us 23x. We have a negative 28, and this is equal to 18. Two-step equation. So notice we need to take care of what's not attached to our variable first, so we can't do anything with this 23 yet. But we are going to take care of this. It's a negative 28, so that means we need to add 28 to both sides to kind of get rid of it. So we're left with 23x is equal to 46. And then just solving for x, we divide by 23. And so x is equal to 2. Alright. And with that being said, we can easily solve for y by using this here. We have y is equal to 7 minus 5x. So y is equal to 7 minus 5x. Let's just insert our x value into this equation and we'll solve for y. So y is equal to 7 minus 5 times 2 So y is equal to 7. Negative 5 times 2 is a negative 10. This gives us a negative 3. So we have y is equal to negative 3. So that would be this problem. Just make sure if you needed to pause anywhere and write things down, that's perfectly fine. Moving on to our next problem though, another one that many of you had trouble with is number 9 on the quiz. Let's just kind of get this set up here. So what we have is, given that the quadrilateral is a parallelogram, we need to find the three values of x, y, and z. Alright, so what do we know about, well, like what are we given and what do we know about parallelograms? Notice here we're given sides and we're also giving angles. So what we know about the angles and sides of a parallelogram is we know alternate angles are congruent. And we also know that opposite sides are congruent. Alright, so with that being said, I think the easiest one to start off with is, this looks kind of like it could be difficult, but notice opposite sides right here. We have 5z and 35. So those are going to be equal to each other because this is a parallelogram. That it is a quadrilateral that is a parallelogram. So we have 35 equals 5 times z. So then solving for z, we have 5 times z. It's just a one-step equation. We're just going to divide by 5. So z is equal to 7. So one variable down. Alright, so now dealing with our angles here. We know that these are going to be the same, but that doesn't really help us in this case. The information that kind of really helps us here is that with a parallelogram, we know that opposite sides are parallel. So we know that these two sides right here are parallel, and we know that this is going to be a transversal. All right, so the knowledge that will really help us in this situation are our angle relationships when we have parallel lines. With parallel lines. Alright, so some information that would help us is, notice transversal, parallel lines. Notice we have alternate interior angles. That knowledge is going to help us. So alternate interior angles, and those are congruent. Alright, so with that being said, looking at our first pair of alternate interior angles, if we see this 4x. So once again, alternate being opposite. So we have 4x and 24. So we can say that 4x is equal to 24 because those are congruent. So it's just a matter of solving for x. We're going to divide by 4 on both sides. So x is equal to 6. And then solving for our last one. Once again, alternate interior angles. We have 32 and y minus 10. So 32 is equal to y minus 10. And I know a lot of you just kind of guessed 22. You didn't actually go about to solve the equation. So try to remember that to follow through with every step. So notice we have a negative 10 here. So we need to add 10 to both sides. So 32 plus 10 is 42. Right. And I may do a couple more problems from the quiz just to go through it. But that's all I have for now, so have a good night.